Hello everyone, my name is Bill Roach. This is another episode of Timeless Dialogues, and today we're going to look at this issue. That's your truth, and there's no such thing as objective truth. Have you heard that before? We live in a time where people will live in these massive inconsistencies. Everybody's saying, you do you live your truth, you live how you want to be, and there's no such thing as truth, and truth is oppressive, and you need to get that white Western colonialism out of my way so that I can express my power dominance in the world, or I can get rid of the power dominance that's over me in our world. We've all heard this, and what I want us to look at today is that this is just another example of moral subjectivity, identity politics, woke ideology. And what I want to do is this. I want us to understand and refute this underlying concept of relativism. And in order to do so, we actually kind of have to trace its roots and understand its philosophical heritage. And then we're going to look at it biblically today. And the reason I want to do this is that this is the mood in which we live today. How many times have you heard something like this? There are so many different interpretations of this particular text. There's no way we could ever come to the point where we could have an objective interpretation of the Bible, or there's no way that a denomination could take an absolute stand on this. Well, guess what that is? That's epistemological relativism. And that's what I want us to look at here today. But before we do, I want to do one other thing. You know, we've been doing this podcast or this channel for quite a while now, and we're primarily on YouTube. So this is my little plug. If you've listened to this, or if you've shared this, or if you're listening to it somewhere else, like on X/Twitter, please like and subscribe to this channel. It really does help me know what you want. It helps me know the kind of content that you're looking for. And it actually just helps me because it helps me build a subscriber base so that we can get this information out to more people. The goal of us doing this is not to just build a platform for a platform's sake. The goal of doing this is to reach as many people possible with the gospel of Jesus Christ and these apologetic issues so that the church can be equipped for the sake of ministry, so that you listening to this can hear these claims in the world and know how to understand and refute them. So that's a little plug. I typically don't do that very often, but I'm going to start to do that just a little bit because I think it's important for us to actually try to help one another out, and I want to try to grow this for that purpose. So again, let's transition here. First thing I want to look at is this concept of the crisis of truth. Have you noticed that we live in a time where several people are living with all of these notions about truth, but yet they don't have the real concept of true truth? And that's something that was pinned by Francis Schaeffer, where there's all these different definitions of truth: personal truth, relative truth, situational truth. But the problem is that none of them are actually a proper definition of truth. And so many of the things that we see today, whether in culture or in the church, boil down to this crisis of truth. We don't have true truth. And we're going to look at what true truth is here in just a second. But let's think of a couple of examples. How many times have you heard people, whether it's in progressive Christianity or in progressive society, or just whenever you get to the point where you've pretty much defeated somebody's position, and they'll say something like this: you must live your own truth, or objectivity is impossible, or nobody can know the truth, or the truth is oppressive, or the truth is fill in the blank. The point is, in some way, shape, or form, truth is either unknowable or it's so relative to the point that we can't really grasp it or we can't really embrace it. And we see how this works its way out. You'll hear things like this: there's no such thing as objective truth, and yet all religions are equally true. Think about that. There's no such thing as objective truth, and yet all religions are equally true. Or here's the inverse of it: there is such a thing as objective truth, and nobody can have the objective, truthful understanding of what the Bible says. Or there's no way we can have an objective, truthful understanding of a particular doctrine in the Bible. You hear these kinds of things all the time. You see it. It's the mood. It's the way people, quote, think in our day and age. And the consequences of this are very clear. There's a moral confusion. People don't understand what's right, what's wrong. They don't understand if we should do this or not do that. And so much of what you see in society today is people not only just disregarding the concept of morality, but they're living in such a way that they're so confused about whether we can even have a knowable, sustainable, legislative form of reality. And we know what this does. It leads to massive intellectual chaos. Everybody's right. Everybody's a king in his own castle. And all theologies are correct. And we're used to this. But it also leads to this notion. We see it all the time in the society in which we live, where people think that everyone's opinion is equally important. And I don't really care which opinion is this or that. I care about which opinion is true. I want to know which one corresponds to reality. I want to know which one is found in the Bible. And we've seen how this has worked out in broader evangelicalism, within different churches, within different things, is it leads to a type of spiritual drift. And I think some of the biggest consequences that we've seen it is the whole influx of what became known as, say, the gay Christian or revoice concepts, where people are trying to make these categories that were so historically understood, and yet they start to blur them. And what we tried to do in the midst of this is we tried to see people who said, it's not this or that, but maybe it's somewhere in the middle. And that's where you get to the whole issue of how desires and temptations and all of these things are somehow acceptable in this regard. We've gone from, be killing sin with John Owen to be embracing desire in, as long as you don't act on it, and all of these mediating positions today. My point is this, is that when you find people who use these, they don't usually give you objective standards, whether it be the objective standard of the Bible. Rather, what they give you is some kind of social narrative to replace the objective standard. Instead of what is true, it's what is your story? The point is this. The key thesis that I want you to realize is this. If truth dies, reason dies. And if reason dies, faith collapses. Now, when I talk about faith, I'm not talking about faith and reason being diametrically opposed. In fact, I think when we look at the concept of faith is a rational faith. It's something you can reasonably know. It's not a blind existential leap of faith. Now, it might be above the categories of where bare reason can get to us. It is something that must be revealed to us, but just by thinking about them, we're not destroying them. And the concept of reason can actually discuss these things. For example, the concept of the incarnation of Jesus Christ is above human reasoning. People did not just think about that one day sitting under a tree, but God revealed it to us. Now, related to that, just a little caveat there, you can actually think about it. You can know it. You can actually have the true understanding of what that is. But the real question comes down to, how in the world did people get to the point where we believe this absurd notion of truth? And there are several philosophical roots of relativism. The first one is this. It really does come from the concept of Nietzsche. God is dead. And, quote, we have killed him. And the claim is that there is no foundation for morality or truth without God. And we see this all the time. You really do live in a world in which either the manifest reality of God exists and it shapes everything and it grounds everything, or God doesn't exist and it's just competing power claims and there's no foundation for morality. There's no foundation for truth. There's no foundation for, which view on mathematics or morality or the Bible or any of these kinds of things related to religion are true or false. It's just literally, it comes down to a form of relativism. Now, the problem with this is that we know that truth exists. We recognize that whenever somebody says truth doesn't exist, they're giving us a truth claim that actually exists independent of them, independent of their narrative, independent of their situation. And the point that I want you to see here is that God provides the rational foundation for the concept of truth. God is truth. Just like God is love, God is truth. And God serves as the foundation for all of reality, whether that be God's ultimate reality or even created reality. The act of creation in the Christian worldview is God manifesting these things in the created being. So you have truth, goodness, and beauty grounded in God, manifested in the world. So if God exists, then truth exists. Conversely, if truth exists, it doesn't just exist independently, like it just popped up out of nowhere. Now, the point is that all effects have a cause, and the effect of the objective nature of truth finds its cause, its grounding, its foundation in God. Now, I want to deal with one little thing. When I say truth doesn't exist independently, what I mean by it is ultimate independence. Obviously, truth does exist independently of my mind's judgments of it. That's the nature of truth. And if I say truth does not exist independent of my mind's judgment of it, is that a truth claim that's dependent on me existing or not existing? The point is, there's an order to it. It's grounded in God. And when God created the world, he made it exist dependently on him, but yet independently of our human projections of it. And what you have to see here is that the world in which we live, the foundations of which we live have been eroded by modern philosophy. So when you look at wokeness and how that works into this, or relativism within hermeneutics, you find that identity politics as Nietzschean moral arbitrators. The point is that the identity politics removes the foundation for truth and morality. Identity politics has destroyed the way that, quote, evangelicals are starting to interpret the Bible. My point is I want you to see is this: God is not dead. God is alive. God grounds truth. The other thing that I want you to see here is that you're going to hear people say things like, well, truth is just merely socially constructed. It's what a group of people have come together about. It's what they've collectively decided to be, quote, truth. And this comes from Foucault. And the claim is that knowledge equals power. And whoever has knowledge has power. But truth is created by the society in which we live. So you have you do you on an individual level. Well, if we were to just extrapolate that out, you do you as a cultural level is how truth works within socially constructed narratives at this point, within Foucault, within the relativistic statements that come in. Now, the problem is that we recognize it's a self-defeating statement. In fact, all of these end up being self-defeating statements. In order to say them, they must be false. So, for example, social consensus does not create facts. Reality exists independently of socially constructed narratives. When you think about the concept of socially constructive narratives, how many times have these people who buy into it live as the minority on whatever position they hold within the broader socially constructed narrative? And yet they're going to look at the bigger, larger socially constructive narrative and say, that's inherently false. So what's interesting is that they then want to become that larger, broader, socially constructed narrative, and they don't allow somebody else to say the same thing. Which room are you going to live in? In this room, they put a hat on and say that truth is socially constructed. In this room, they try to critique those who are in the broader social sphere, and they deny their social construction of truth. You can't have both. The point is that institutions cannot redefine morality, and they don't ground ideological control. Reality grounds ideological control. We are bouncing off of the furniture of reality that is not just by consensus. One man who is correct can stand upon the foundation of truth, even if billions of people in the social construct disagree. That's the nature of truth. The next thing is you find this notion that is in our society. Well, truth is just that which works. And this comes from the classic pragmatists like James and Rorty. And what they're going to claim is that truth is something of usefulness, or if it's useful, it defines truth. But the problem with this is that utility doesn't prove reality. Something may work socially and, quote, be false, or doesn't correspond with the reality of morality or the reality of what the situation is. And I think of it in the broadest sort of moral spheres. The whole issue of the whole trans LGBTQ movement is that they're trying to use the utility of people loving one another or the utility of social relationships and how they, quote, work. The problem is, one, they don't actually work. They're just giving you a false narrative, but they're still false. Genetics disproves it. Biology disproves it. DNA disproves it. Exegesis of scripture refutes it. Historically understood categories for gender and what these things mean refute it. The biological necessity of creating new people independent of hocus pocus labs refutes it. My point is this. The example is that these woke reforms that fail ethically because they don't correspond to reality despite their political implementation. The point is they're all manifestly self-refuting. So let's look at a few of these. Let's give a couple of examples of this. You're going to hear somebody say something like this. Your truth is valid for you and my truth is valid for me. And the refutation of it is this. Truth is universal. Reality is not negotiable. That phrase is universal, and that phrase for them is not negotiable. The point is this, is that God has given us a conscience, and God has given us a mind, and God has given us a reality that's logically necessary in order for these things to be grounded, and that they're cross-cultural at all times, at all places. In order to deny it, you must actually prove it. The next one is this. All religions are equally true. The Muslim, the Jew, the Buddhist, the Hindu, the Christian, even all of the subcults of the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're all equally true. But the problem is that the very concept of truth is undermined in this. There are contradictory claims between the different religions. The Muslims say that Jesus Christ was not the Son of God, did not die on the cross, therefore he could not have rose from the dead, and that he was just merely a prophet. Whereas Christianity says Jesus Christ died on the cross, he was buried, he resurrected from the grave, he's more than a prophet, and he's the Son of God. When you look at Judaism, they're going to deny the deity of Christ, and you see the things, oh, Jesus wasn't really resurrected, they just merely stole him. And my point is that when you look at all of the different cults and the different world religions, they have contradictory claims about God, Jesus Christ, the nature of salvation, the person and work of Jesus Christ, and all of the entailments of what make Christianity Christianity. The point is this, is that Christianity says, and very clearly, the apostle said, for there is salvation found in no other name under heaven except the name of the man Christ Jesus. So if all religions are equally true, is that claim equally true? Are you going to allow the truth claim for the exclusivity of Christianity to be equally true amongst all of the inclusive claims of all of the inclusivists out there? I don't think so. Another one is this. Here's another one that you'll hear people say. Judging others is oppression. Well, the problem is that the refutation we must see is that judgment aligned with objective moral law is necessary, and it's not oppression, it's the right ordering of reality. Moral discernment is not oppression, or identity determines morality and justice. Now, the problem with that claim is that morality requires an objective standard, of which identity politics does not give us. Woke policies will often redefine fairness in some arbitrary way. Have you ever noticed they're going in this direction, then boom, they shift to another one? It's arbitrary. It's whatever they're making up at the moment. Or you'll hear things like this. History is subjective and narratives define reality. Notice this, they don't give you a narrative initially for that, but the point is that facts exist independent of just narratives. They're self-grounding realities of this. Rewriting something doesn't change the reality of it. There are false histories out there, but in order for there to be a false history, there must be a true history, which is grounded in the reality of what actually happened. There's objective history versus ideological spin. And ultimately, these people are trying to say this notion of all history is subjective, except that claim and the histories that they give you. One can't know the reality of objective history except the reality of that objective history that they're trying to communicate to you. And here's one more, just for the fun of it. Words are inherently oppressive. Whenever you use words, you're being oppressive. Do not use words with me. But notice this, aren't they using words? Wouldn't they be oppressive? It's self-refuting. Words are merely tools, and the misuse of words and sometimes the use of words to oppress people does not redefine reality. We live in a world of words, and in that world of words, God makes his words known, and he makes his words known as true. Language reflects that reality. It doesn't change the reality. Language should be grounded in reality, not grounded in arbitrary, oppressive, Marxist sort of narratives on these particular things. So let's finish with a few things here. Let's look at this concept here of what is the nature of truth. So we've looked at why relativism falls, and what I want you to see is that there's a clear, classic, historic understanding of the philosophical definition of truth. Truth is that which corresponds with reality. So in order for me to say something like this, there's a computer sitting right in front of me, that statement is only true if a computer is actually in front of me. Truth is that which corresponds with the reality, it's grounded in reality, and insofar as you can know reality, you can know truth. And here's the fact of the matter. You can know reality. To say I can't know reality is to know the reality of I can't know reality. This view of truth is the long-held understanding of truth in Aristotle and in Aquinas and in the classic understanding of truth in the philosophical and in the Christian heritage of this. This is the view of truth you want when you go to a bank. When you say something like, give me the $20 that's in my bank account, and they say, no, that's just true for you and not for me, that's a self-defeating statement. The reality is that if you have $20 in the bank, you can get it out. This is the judgment of truth that we use in our judicial courts. We want to know the truth, nothing but the truth, and the whole truth, so help me God. You really want to have this concept of truth corresponds to reality if somebody makes a false accusation against you. It's used in our courts. It's used in our legal system. It's used by the vast majority of philosophers. The point is this: truth does not equal your belief or your opinion. And the denial of absolutes is self-contradictory. And what you have to recognize is that you have to deny the narratives that the people are trying to give you, because what they try to do is they try to redefine truth to fit this ideology and collapse the concept of reasoning, justice, and societal order. The point is, truth is knowable, reality is knowable, and anybody who denies that is making a self-defeating statement. So here's just a few more things that I think we need to consider here. When you see how this relates to the Bible and how it relates to Christianity, you're going to hear people say things, well, what about moral relativism? Who are you to judge? Well, the Bible does give us an objective standard: objective moral law, objective reality, objective scripture. We are given the ability to make a righteous judgment. In addition, you're going to hear people say things, well, what about religious pluralism? All paths lead to God. Well, all paths can't lead to God because all the different religions contradict one another, including the idea that all religions are true, and yet Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Which one are you going to have? So the practical thing, the practical apologetic that you need to do is you need to ask clarifying questions. Is that true for everyone? Would all religions claim that every religion is equally true? The point is that you must defend truth by just merely defining truth and making people live within the boundaries of truth and standing upon the conviction of this, not the subjective morality and the subjective view of knowledge that people use to silence dissent. And that's exactly how people operate with this. Here's the beauty of truth. The beauty of truth is this: you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Truth liberates your mind and your soul. It gives stability and clarity. The other thing is this: truth is not only logical and liberating and stable and a good foundation, it's also manifestly beautiful. The true, the good, and the beautiful. The ethical, the metaphysical, and the notion of aesthetics. True things are beautiful because God has made reality beautiful. There's freedom in truth, just like there's freedom in the beauty that one finds. They're interrelated. And the point is this: if we're going to lose in today's age the concept of truth, we're going to lose our concept of God and our concept of biblical revelation and our concept of reality. And that's exactly what people want. But in finding truth, we find our concept of God, we find our concept of reality, we find our concept of biblical revelation, and you're going to find rest. It shall set you free. The issue with the woke movement and the abandonment of objective truth is that it leads to social and personal chaos. So in recap here, here's the whole point that I want you to see. Truth exists, truth is knowable, and truth is objective. We are called to love the truth, defend the truth, and live boldly by the truth. And here's the final thing that I want you to go away with this. Truth isn't just a concept to debate. It's a reality to follow. Once you see truth clearly, relativism and every woke distortion of reality is no longer an option. It's just off the table. And so many people today, going back to our idea, they don't have a concept of true truth. They have existential truth. They have personal subjective truth. And the way to defeat this is to have a resurgence of the concept of truth. So one final thing here, like I said, I don't do these very often. If you've listened this far, please like and subscribe and maybe even leave a comment on this video because it just helps me know what you like, what you need, how many are still listening, and then send it on to other people. Just send it to somebody. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue looking at these concepts of truth, and we're going to go significantly more in detail. We're not just going to continue to say it's all self-defeating. We're going to continue to build a concept of truth. So again, I appreciate all of you. Until next time.